So I was living at home at the time, and parents, thank God, we have a weekend house in Pocono, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours away. And I don't know if you're familiar, but
I am. Yeah, I know the
oh, really?
Poconos. Yeah, I know the Poconos. Yeah, I don't know the exact spot, but yeah, I know where you're talking.
Yeah, yeah, and it's super common. A lot of New Yorkers have houses out there. They have houses in the Hamptons, like weekend houses, but a lot in the Poconos now. In the last like 10, 15 years, it's grown. Like they have ski resorts, outlet malls, breweries, wineries, everything you can imagine. So, luckily we all went out there for 3, 4 months and we were just locked down there and we had a great time. I mean, cousins, family was around. So we yeah, we're playing tennis, playing sports all the time. Like it was great. So I don't really know how it was here in the city, but then coming back, I remember I was coaching that first summer. I was coaching tennis right out. I went to the Hamptons, and man, the business, like, I don't know what the numbers were that summer, but they've set records. Man, everybody wanted to play because they like that was the only sport, that and golf. Like, what else are you gonna do?
You're talking tennis, right? When you say coaching, yeah, you do tennis coaching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fitness coaching as well, but it was tennis. I remember it was just so freaking busy, and everybody was out playing. Oh yeah, when's last time you played? Oh, I haven't played in 15 years. Now I just want to get back into it, and it started there. So it's the last 2 years for the tennis business. COVID actually, I mean, shut it down for 3 months, but man, have they, like, every single club that I know of has sprung back big time. Like, their revenue's out the roof.
Yep. Well, that's kind of the flip side of COVID, right? So like I live in New England, and so like right now, anytime I can go out now, things have kind of calmed down. I can go hiking or whatever, and I won't see anybody for hours, right? During COVID, dude, it was like a line. Like, I mean, you're passing people like left and right because people got reconnected. That's all you could do was go out and, like, get into nature, be outside and that kind of thing. And so, I mean, obviously horrible with COVID and the tragedy, but it did get people reconnected to this idea of wellness and just kind of like overall health. And what am I doing to invest in my health? You don't expect a pandemic to hit, but there should be things I should be doing on a regular basis to appreciate what I've got available to me and my abilities. So that's actually hit your world as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that COVID was weird because I think it actually like highlighted so many things. Like, you clearly can't stay at the house all day. If you do, you're gonna go crazy. Your insecurities are all blowing up in your face. And that, like, I'm sure we're going to talk about, the anxiety disorder, panic disorder, mental health in general. I mean, anxiety, everyone suffers with that. But that really, like, it highlights everything. Like, you have no choice. You're just sitting there in the darkness and it's not healthy. You're not moving around. And people, like, there's a lot of people that were saying, oh, this is like really serious. This is like the worst thing ever. Then some people were saying it was a scam. You didn't know what to believe. And now I notice people aren't really talking about it. Like, once in a while in the tennis club, or I meet someone, oh yeah, I COVID 3 weeks ago. I'm like, wait, you still get, like, that's still a thing? Like, you sure it's not a flu? It could be a flu. Like, everyone's getting sick now because it's before the winter. But it was definitely weird. And I can't imagine being in the city or being locked in an apartment. Like, that must be tough. And in New York, especially, where it blew, like, that was the epicenter. Everyone were terrified watching the news. They see this blowing up. Italy, all this happened in New York is just growing. The cases, everyone's like terrified. I remember they even they cut the basketball nets, and they, like, not masking tape, the caution tape. They wrapped it all in Central Park because people they didn't want to stay at the house, so they would play pickup basketball. But that was direct contact. So at the time, they're like, no, you can't do that because, it spread COVID and all this. But I mean, weird time, man.
And then everybody got it anyway,
Yeah. At one point.
That's, so, and again, you want to kind of think about, especially some of our more vulnerable folks who got this, and we lost people to COVID for sure. But the vast majority of that was that fear mongering and people kind of like concerned, and even that restricting people from going outside, which is like exactly what you want people to do now that we know better. And I think about, you said the mental health world. For us, we just learned people don't do well in isolation, right? I mean, that's the number one thing. So whatever anybody had, just magnified it by being in isolation. Because if you're dealing with an anxiety disorder, depression, whatever, a lot of it is inside out. You're dealing with it internal states and manifesting that in your reality. Well, now you're stuck at home with just that voice. You know what I mean? And so that's all you're hearing. You're getting any counter information. And so it was, it was an unfortunate time, but it was a difficult time in terms of demand because the needs quadrupled in terms of people seeking care and and the diagnosis of anxiety disorders, depression, things like that. So it hit hard for sure. Really did. So yeah, go ahead. You about to say something about that or?
Yeah, I want to ask you, but what do you think in terms of isolation with, I mean, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but I feel like I've learned, I kind of came to this realization as well, where it's like, is all isolation, well, I don't know if isolation is the best word, but like just kind of staring at the darkness and just like being there with it. I think I see a lot of value in that. I wouldn't call it really isolation, but yeah, something where it's like, I think it's good to have a mix of the two, a support, a community, people out, but then also like stare at your own shit, like deal with your own problems.
Well, locus of control is a big part of that, right? So like, what's the difference between me choosing to go spend some time alone with my thoughts versus me being placed in solitary confinement, right? Like one is a punishment that has been proven time and time again to be traumatic to humans, and that's a solitary confinement. The other has a multitude of health benefits, both mental and physical. And I think a lot of it has to do with who made the decision, right? Where's the locus of control? If I'm making that choice on my own behalf, there's a lot of value that can be gleaned from that. But if it's like forced upon me, even though I'm doing the same thing, which is being alone with my thoughts, my experience of it is like completely different. At least, so that's my perspective on it is it a choice or is it a consequence, or, you know, that can change the whole thing, you know?
That's such a good point because when it comes to healing with anxiety, my coach specifically on anxiety disorder healing, he said the exact same thing. When he was struggling with agoraphobia, he would go out and run, he would do these things, and it's like, you're going to have a panic attack at home, or you go out and you run and you have a panic. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to sit and just wait for it to happen, or are you going to willingly go towards it? So that's like what you're saying. It's like, no, if you move towards it, it's a choice, and it's just a different angle that you're taking it from.
Well, in one of those scenarios, you're a victim, you know, and in the other one of those scenarios, you're behind the steering wheel, you're driving, you know what I mean? So I think it's Chase. So before we get too far down, like let's get some background there, because you've talked about your coach, you've talked about some of the anxiety stuff and things like that. So Richie, why don't you get into? I mean, we can do it pre-COVID, post, but give us some of your background and how you came to this world and how you kind of like what your experience was that led to some of these realizations.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, a brief, I guess, overview. It really all started when I was younger. Playing tennis, competing, traveling, playing tournaments, having parents that were, you know, great, but also father that was, you know, strict, wanted me to do well. I interpreted it as like I had to do this, I had to be really good. So I was putting a lot of pressure on myself unconsciously. That carried over into middle school and high school, where I always felt this need to kind of become better, become more popular. I was afraid of just like eating lunch and hanging out by myself or with another friend, you know, as I felt like, oh, that's too nerdy, or this guy's nerdy, like I don't want to be seen with him. And it was just a constant dialogue of like, it's just me fighting with this like demon. And in high school was a lot of that. It was always like social status, trying to seem a certain way. And growing up around being in tennis, all my friends were tennis players, and we played on the team together. We were really good friends, spent a lot of time together, and they were these guys that were confident. They were, you know, really cool guys, good guys to hang out with, always got the girls, you know, that kind of thing. And for me, when I was like, well, I'll say 16, 17, my hair started falling out. So that was a pretty traumatic, you know, happening at a really young age. And I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't expect it to happen within years. It's just like it's falling out like left and right. It was crazy. And I remember 18, 19, I was like, all right, well, I got to, you know, really do something about this. And the more you stress, the more the hair falls out, you know, that kind of thing. And going through all the supplements, doing all this stuff. But when I started buzzing it, I hit this point where I was like, man, like this is kind of what's meant to be. Like I'm not meant to have hair on my head, as crazy as that sounds. It's just like this is the way it's supposed to be. And that also fueled that kind of like need in me to like prove people wrong, and always feeling like the victim and like, oh, this person did this. And it it was building up on the back end. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And so you said in high school is when you really cognizant and aware of this, but that stuff with the pressure, was that a dialogue? I mean, how young did that dialogue begin for you?
Unfortunately, it was super young. I have a lot of memories where like you get homework assigned, you put it in, and I feel like the stress just handing in the homework, and it's just very, very intense. Like, yeah, very early. I'll say elementary, middle school. Um, yeah, that's really where it started. And in the back end, it was building up, and I didn't really realize it. Um, and going through high school and college, I kind of kept it low key. I didn't really tell people about like things that I went through. Um, People always saw like the surface level me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's a nice guy. He's put together. He's professional." I always got that nice guy, man. I couldn't stand that, man. I was like, "Fuck, like you don't like." Tell me, yeah, tell me something else. Like, tell me, oh, he's funny or something. Like, I don't want to hear that anymore. Oh, he's such a nice guy from girls, from guys, from everyone. And
It's so stuck in the middle, right? Like you almost want like some polarization because the nice guy is like so like middle 50 percentile, right? It's just not good, not bad, and you're sitting there with an internal voice going like, no, I want to be good enough. So that's like no feedback for me, that's very frustrating.
Exactly. And in my mind, I have this vision of like this badass entrepreneur that I want to be. And they're like, oh yeah, Richie, he's a cool, nice guy, And I'm like, well, thank you. But like, this is not it. So I was getting like mad at other people for not viewing me as the way that I want to be viewed. And like all this kind of stuff. But, yeah. And then, through college, it was definitely a weird time. But, got through it, definitely had a great time. And, when I graduated, I committed my senior year of college to, okay, I want to build an online business and I want to become successful. And when I started on that journey, that's where all these insecurities and all these things really started to blow up in my face, and I didn't even realize it.
No, I think that's a good. We'll dig into what you did with that, but I think when we're working with clients, that's something we talk about a lot of times. If you don't address these things, because you said like through college and high school, I didn't really tell anybody about this. I didn't really talk about these issues, but like you will carry them around. Like they're just waiting on you till you're ready to face them. You know what I mean? It's not like physical where it's sort of like time heals all wounds. You know what I mean? It's like that baggage, you're just going to keep carrying it around, until you decide to do something about that and face up to it. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned before we get too far down the road that you didn't talk about that. Was that also part of that pressure? Like, was it like social where were people not going to therapy? Was mental health like not embraced during that time? I mean, you're a pretty young guy. So, why do you think you didn't talk about it back then?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I felt that it would lower the status that I had of being this nice guy, really clean, put together, no issues. And I just saw it as something that's embarrassing. I didn't want people to know about it. I didn't feel comfortable sharing it, and I felt like I would be judged, ridiculed. I just didn't think that it was socially acceptable. And funny enough, when I did start talking about it, there was some pushback for very few people, and that only lasted a little bit. And for the most part, everyone's like, "Oh, nice, that's awesome." And then half of them are like, "Shit, I struggle with that too." I'm like, "Huh, isn't that funny?" Like, so
Yeah, everything. The more personal it is, the more universal it is, right? And it's hard to trust that because you feel like you're the only one feeling a certain way, or And I'm starting to get pieces of your story. You're also working on this like good enough polished image, and to like raise your hand and say I need help would fly right in the face of that whole I've got my blank together, and I've got it all figured out. It would be kind of like an admission of almost faking it or not being able to keep it all together, right? So you've got a little gender stuff there, you've got some athlete stuff, you'd have to be vulnerable, you'd have to be weak, and that's a hard thing to show people, especially if you're dealing with that insecurity. So
and I always wondered why that was. Why is it that people are afraid to like to express themselves and share these things? Because I've been doing therapy for a minute. It's been years and years, and go through all this coaching and mentorship, and now I tell people that I just met, I'm more comfortable. I guess like the muscle has been developed where I don't really care as much. But I thought to myself, like, why was that such a big deal to tell people I'm struggling with this or I have anxiety? And it's not just me. It's like so many people out there are struggling. Like, get a coach, get a therapist, like go ask your friend, like, come on, like, you're not going to do this by yourself. No one has ever done it by themselves. Like, whatever it is you want to do, no one has ever done it by themselves. Like,
And if they say they are, they're cutting somebody out of the picture, right? Like they're telling a story, or they're just lacking awareness, right? Like we all need support, whether it's formal therapy or not. I mean, assistance comes in all different forms. And that's one of the things I'm so interested to get into your story about, because when we talk about therapy and things like that, you're not a therapist per se, but you are helping people in that space. So it's even more evidence of like help can come in all forms, So, so tell me a little bit more about that. So you're trying to be an entrepreneur. You've graduated college. Okay, I can't fake this any longer. I've got to do something about it. So you dig in and you start working on yourself. Tell us, kind of what that process was like at first and what it led to for you.
well, I was always working on myself, but it was coming from an unhealthy place. It was like, I remember being a senior in college and me sitting with my hanging out because we had this big tennis house with like 10 guys in it. And I was sitting there with my roommate and I would always do my bed, keep my side of the room clean, read 30 minutes to an hour before I go to bed, didn't check my phone, all the things that you see on Instagram. Oh, this is what entrepreneurs do. I'm like, all right, like, I'm 23. Yeah, I'll do it too. Why not? I'll drink my lemon water in the morning on an empty stomach. Why not?
Yeah.
And I'll do everything. But it was because I wanted, number one, approval. I wanted everyone to be like, oh, Richie, he's going to be successful. But it's like, that doesn't matter. And I started to realize it as time went on. But so it was a constant like drag. And I didn't even genuinely want to do all these things. Like when I started getting into all these coaching programs, they were telling us about morning routines and all this stuff. And I was just doing it, but I was doing it just to do it because everyone there, because this guy that he made 50K last month, I was on the phone with him and he's telling me, oh, morning routines are really the game changer for me. But little did I know he had 15 years of business experience and all these stuff. Like he didn't mention that, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like crap. I'm just can't even get someone to talk to me about my offer, but I forget.
Well, I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a story before we get any further. So there's a hilarious story about Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was out, like the guy, right? Like he was Mr. Olympia and doing his thing. And people were coming to him the exact same way you were coming to these entrepreneurs. Like, what's the secret, right? Like, I need to know the secret. Like, tell me the vitamin, tell me the steroid, tell me the workout plan, tell me the whatever. And so he started screwing with people. And he's like, nobody knows this, but here's what I do to stay so shredded. He's like, every day I would get up and I would eat a teaspoon of salt. And that's how I'd start my day, as I'd eat a teaspoon of salt. And day 2, I ate 2. And then day 3, I ate 3. And I built up to where now I do 30 teaspoons of salt every morning, right? And so he started telling
pounds
people
of salt,
just pounding salt, right? And that's why he's so ripped and shredded. Well, it's like, ha ha ha. But then like, I guess a guy did it. And like at day 17 had to go to the hospital with like,
oh my God,
with like kidney issues because he was dehydrating himself. And so the guy turned out okay. So it's an okay story, but it speaks to that desire, right? Like you're in your early 20s, like you're looking to the kings of your sport, the kings of your industry. And you're like, what's the secret? When in reality, there are no secrets, right? It's always a combination. It's what individualized system that works for you, that you can stick with, blah, 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 blah. But if it was as simple as these 3 things, everybody would just do those 3 things, right? And we'd all be millionaires. So, but you don't know that till it's too late, right? So it's interesting.
What you just said, like the desire, that's what clicked right now for me. It's the desire can be so intense where you will do literally anything to make it happen. And that's exactly how I felt. Like graduating school, I saved up all my money, and at the time I studied exercise science nutrition in college, and I was like, all right, I'm going to become a certified strength coach and start, training people. And then why not? There's a business coaching program specifically for fitness coaches to bring their business online. And he was teaching specifically these kinds of people. I'm like, all right, yeah, why not? I'll hop in. And the program now is called, now he sold the company, but it was called Life Changer Academy at the time, LCA, by Sterling Griffin. Really cool entrepreneur, really, nice guy. vested the 10 grand into the coaching program. And that was my first investment. I had the first 10 grand I made. I was like, all right, I want to do this because I see the results. I see the testimonials in it. I'm in contact with people that are in this program and they're doing amazing things. I mean, they're living this amazing life, working online, traveling the world. So I'm like, yeah, of course I want that too. But in the back end, I was like, I felt like a victim. I was like, this person disrespected me, and I want to make money so I can become successful, so I can feel better about myself. And that was my main driving force. It was just such a strong desire. And the months that I was in the program, 4 5 months, I was like a different person. Again, they told me morning, you got to do this morning routine. You got to wake up at 5 a.m. They're literally telling us step by step what to do. I'm like, I'll do it. Yeah. I invested the 10 grand. And now that I think about it, it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. At least I don't think so. And did everything. And, weeks, months go by and I'm struggling. I'm struggling not only in my business, which that was my first business offer. Like, if I think that that's going to blow up into a multi-million-dollar business, which I literally thought at the time.
At the time, you're like, this is it. Yep.
And I was like, well, you're delusional. Like, it doesn't happen that way. Like, no entrepreneur, very few entrepreneurs really succeed on their first business. But it was just such a strong desire. And that was like pulling me every single day. And it was, I mean, literally someone would try to give me advice on my business and I'd literally get so upset at them. Like, I'm like, why are, family or friends? I'm like, I invested this much money into this. Like, why would I listen to you? Like, have you built an online business? No. And they were just trying to be genuine and helpful. But I was just in this state of mind of like, I really wanted that to happen. So,
well, and it sounds like you're still very uncomfortable because you were doing a lot of work out here, trying to change how you felt in here. You know what I mean? And so all your energies are directed thinking that if I have the money, the success, the cars, all of a sudden now the internal feeling of being good enough or not good enough. And, the things that I've worried about, and dad will see that I did make it and made something of myself. And now it is enough, I'll finally be enough. And what's remarkable about your story is how I guess seriously you dug into that in your early 20s, because there's a lot of people in the early 20s that are just kind of like floating, right? Like the failure to launch, I'll figure it out. I mean, I think about myself at 21, 22. I mean, I was in college and playing sports, so there was some success stuff there. But I was not drinking lemon water and getting up at 5 a.m, man. I wasn't even thinking like that, And so everybody has their own individual journey to it. It's interesting to see you so wired and so focused just early on, and like, I got to change this, even at like 22, 23, like, I got to change this. So you must have been carrying around that internal stuff for a long time. It must have been chewing you up.
Yeah. That's what it is. And even till now, it's kind of like, I feel like I don't really have a choice but to make online business work and just strive to be successful. Because number one, I feel like I genuinely enjoy it. I deep down, even though sometimes it sucks, like I enjoy, doing the things like the self-care stuff, helping people, running coaching calls, doing podcasts. Like this is stuff that I really enjoy. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like, I think Jack Harlow, a rapper, said this one day. He was, I don't know. Do you know who Jack Harlow is?
Yeah. I know who Jack Harlow is. Yeah. I got 2 kids, so they keep me in the know on this kind of stuff. Okay. Yeah. It's a Louisville guy. So
yeah. And he was saying in an interview when he was like he started when he was like 16, 17, like going around and performing on little spots.
Mm-hmm.
And he said and he's 24, 25. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
He has so much success. And he was saying how like, he knew that this was going to happen. Like of course he had his doubts and insecurities, but he just knew deep down. And that's kind of the feeling that I had with this, like starting out. I was like, I grew up in a really great area, nice, like, you hear all these stories of like people, they grew up in like this dump and they climbed their way out of it. But for me, everything was great, but I just felt like I had to make this happen.
Yeah, unfulfilled. So, I mean, and we were talking before, this actually started, so we've got internal states and the way you're feeling and thinking, but this actually started creating some like physical problems for you, right? Like some real, so yeah, when did that change and what was going on with that?
Yeah, so this was on my 22nd birthday. Went out with the boys to an all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant, smashed like 50 pieces of sushi. And we
Kobayashi,
were,
man.
what?
You Kobayashi, man. You're crushing it.
Yeah, that's right. That was so good, so good. Um, and we were talking about all the school shootings that were happening. And we were discussing it, and at the time, it seemed like every 2 weeks there was a new one in Orlando, one here. And it was all like these young guys that were just graduated high school, and they were traumatized, and they went, to their school and shot up the school. And I was sitting there, and it was like I felt like this was coming from every angle. Like, you'd go home, the TV was on, they were talking about it. We're sitting at the dinner, we're talking about it. It was just from everywhere. And I thought to myself, I had this one thought, and this really terrified me. I was like, well, if all these people are doing it, like, is anyone capable of doing something like this? And that thought, like, drove me into such a deep panic. And I've never experienced emotions like that ever before. I was like, this is instantly got pale, right? My friends are like, are you all right? Like, they could see it. Went to the bathroom, and I was like, what? Like, how could I even think a thought like that? Like, these people, they have problems, like, they're mentally ill. And it was just so uncomfortable. The week after that, every single day I'd wake up and I'd remember that moment. I was like, that wasn't normal. Like, there was something off about that. I didn't know what that was, but I feel like I should get that checked out. A week after, something similar happened where you hear on the news, oh, the suicide rate, so many people are killing themselves. And I'm like, is anyone capable of doing, like, what if I go crazy one day? What if I get really upset and then I just decide to do something like that? And again, these are really uncomfortable thoughts, intrusive thoughts. Didn't know what was happening. And I was like, all right, spoke to my parents about it, got in touch with a therapist. She helped me a ton. But that's initially where it started. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening. I just assumed that this was anxiety. And whenever I would share, like, obviously parents were very accepting of it, but whenever I would share with some close friends and close family, they would view it as like, it's anxiety, like, it's just a thought, and I would get so upset because I'm like, no, man, I'm telling you, this is not normal. Like, this can't be like, this isn't how this isn't normal. Like, that was my thing.
How did you and your therapist, I mean, with as much detail as you're comfortable with, but how did you guys approach that work? Like, what did you do to get, to a good place with that and develop some understanding? Were there any specific steps, or was it more about kind of processing work and getting your thoughts around it?
I think it was a mix of both, but I would say 30% of it was processing. 70% of it was calming the nervous system, and her supporting me that these are just intrusive thoughts, and her reaffirming that you're healthy, you're sane, there's nothing wrong with you. I work with suicidal people. They are not you. I've worked with people that are thinking about hurting other people. They are not. Like, these are two completely different things. And every Thursday when I would meet with her, saying that, I would leave the office. All right, I feel more calm. I feel more calm. But that was just the beginning. And obviously the deep breathing, right? Yeah. Inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 8, anything breath related to calm the nervous system.
Yep.
Because eventually I learned that it's an anxiety disorder, and it develops into a disorder, but it was a panic attack. Cortisol, adrenaline raises, you want to allow it to calm down. And it took, I would say a few months for me to get to a very solid place. And then for like a few years, it was kind of just random. It was on and off, where I would have weeks, maybe a month, where I would feel pretty consistently these heavy emotions, but then it would go away for weeks and months. So I was on and off of therapy. And that was for like probably about 3 years.
Yeah. And then where do you sit today? Are you still kind of on that schedule, or are you kind of in a good place with all of that now?
Now I'm on a good place, but it was there's more to it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
going
yeah,
through,
yeah. Tell me the rest then. Yeah, because I'm, the guy before me today, right? Like you said, it's like, well, who could have these thoughts? Like I wouldn't guess that of you, right? But I think under the right circumstances, we talked early on about solitary confinement versus spending time alone. Under the right circumstances, anybody's capable of almost anything, over time. I mean, these are humans having those thoughts, and these are humans committing those acts, and I'm one of those. I'm a human, right? So the context is interesting, but it just feels like there's a lot of space between the panic attack at the sushi restaurant and where you are today. So kind of walk me through. So you get a grip on that, and did you start working with other people on that right away, or did that take some time as well? Because you had other symptoms besides just that, right?
Yeah, had other symptoms. Nothing more than I would have like this random like panic. Was never so overblown up until this day, knock on wood. Where it got to a point where I'm like, oh, I need to go to a hospital,
Gotcha.
or something like that. But
just kind of in the background. It was just there. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was just kind of there, and it would come in random moments. That's what was annoying. That people that are struggling with this that are listening, they know what I'm talking about. Where you can sometimes associate your panic and your anxiety with scenarios and locations, but this was maybe there was a few spots or ideas and things that happened that triggered it, but it was very random, and that's what was so annoying. That when I got back on therapy, I recently just got off of it, actually last week. I'm working with a new therapist.
Mm-hmm.
This was for a few months, and he was always trying to identify patterns. And I was like, I don't know. It keeps going off. And I know for a fact that if I was home alone at the end of the day, it would get triggered a lot because it's just me. And it's that like the isolation, because I'm just sitting there and I'm like, what the, this is not okay. But then if you take it from another approach, is what my coach taught me. It's, staring at your darkness. It's like, these are just thoughts. And you just keep reaffirming that, and all it takes is like one or two times where you feel you break free, where you feel that panic for 15 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And then you tell yourself, you're like, nah, it's all good. It's not you. You're sane. You're good. You're good. Deep breathing. And it just takes one time. And it's like, hold on. Okay. If I could do that, all right, let me try that again next time it happens. And then you do it twice. And that's where it kind of like gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, it's nice when you can cut off always and never, right? Those are those absolute thoughts of like, I'm always freaking out. I'm always going to struggle with this. I'm always going to have these thoughts. And it's like, or I'm never going to be in control of it, right? But then when you feel that sense of control and feel that sense of relief, it's like, oh, it's not 100% anymore. It's 99%. Now it's 95. Now it's 80, right? And so little by little, that snowball rolls down the hill and you start to get that positive momentum going. So
100%. And that's how anxiety disorder, panic disorder, chronic anxiety, anything that viewers are people that are listening to this, if you're struggling, like, it's a buildup. It doesn't just happen like that. There's something that has been happening in the background that has gotten you up until this point. So the same way you learned and you created this energy in you, you can unlearn it and go towards something different, something maybe a little better, something more beneficial for you. And taking that approach, along with a few other things that I'd love to share later that would definitely help people, man, like it really is curable and healable. But I was going to share, like, back to the story. Yeah, I was like on and off therapy. And this was about 4.5 years ago where I had that first panic. And for years, it was like, I was reaching out for help, but it was tamed. It wasn't that bad. And I was constantly working and building my business. Again, the anxiety building up in the back end. Oh, this offer doesn't work. Okay. Oh, but I accomplished this. Okay. Maybe I can help people with this. All right. Fuck it. Let me go all in on this offer. Hiring different coaches, and super grateful for everything. I mean, I've invested over $35,000 into coaching and mentorship and stuff like that. And it's so worth it because it was around a community of people that were supportive, and I've had some amazing opportunities and connections from all of that. But it didn't really get too bad up until last summer, August. And the symptoms really started to ramp up and come back. And even from before, I still didn't know what this was. At the time, I had this I was working with a coach. She was more of like spiritual business coach. That's, I guess, probably the best label to put it. Helps people build their online business, but more in a conscious, spiritual way, law of attraction, that kind of stuff. And he's absolute genius. And as he was helping me, I would reach out to him and ask him about this kind of stuff, like what should I do, and I would explain to him, and he'd be like, just take a deep breath. This anxiety, let it pass. And that got me so mad because I'm like, no, this is not it. Like, I'm telling you, this is worse than you think it is. And it was really, it just kept building and building and building to a point where I'm like, all right, this is interrupting my life. It's not, oh, once in a while I have anxiety. Like, no, this is happening multiple days a week. There are some weeks where it happened every single day where it's like almost a full-blown panic. I'm like happy to leave the house because that's where it happened. It would happen to me a lot where I was like kind of just felt isolated and I was home alone. I was happy to leave the house, happy to just get moving, to get some of that adrenaline out. And I was like, okay, this is a problem. Got back on therapy, started to work through this. In the beginning, it actually kind of made it worse, I noticed, with therapy because we were talking about it constantly and we were overanalyzing it and reviewing it. And it wasn't up until a few months back where I got in touch with this coach, and he specifically helps people with anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and agoraphobia, which is a fear of panic attacks, your fear of living. You're just locking yourself in your house and afraid to leave. And everything that he was sharing in his posts, I was like, damn, like this is it. This is exactly what I'm struggling with. And this was the only person that I ever saw or connected with that understood what I went through and also went through it because of the things that he was sharing. I'm like, okay, he understands. So I got in touch with him and, I was like, I started working with him. I was like, as soon as possible, because I have this strong desire. I want to live my life. And I want to live it in a great way. So whatever it is I need to do, I'm willing to do it. And I started working with him and it was best thing I've ever done, honestly, up until this day, seriously.
Well, and there's two really important themes to not lose in your story. One is that recovery is not a straight line, right? Like it'd be one type of story if you were like, hey, I had a panic attack, I saw a therapist and I've never felt it again, right? Like that's sort of the outlier. Like it's not generally how it works. So the fact that even though you were doing the good work and even though you had gained some semblance of control, that relapse and recurrence of this and it coming back and even stronger is very typical. And I think people need to be ready for that for sure. And the other thing I thought about while listening to your story was the value of just finding somebody who you feel understands, like actually understands, right? So we'll talk about the work that you and him did, but it's like, it's not even like a magical technique. It's just, it all started from a place of, no, this dude gets it. Right. And so people ask a lot of times like, well, how do I know if I have the right therapist? Or when I'm picking a therapist, how do I know to pick one from the other? And I think that's the best piece of advice is if you get a sense from them that they understand and they get it, you've got a really strong foundation to build from, right? Because otherwise, if they don't get it or they don't have a full understanding or you're not connecting, they can have perfect technique and they can have all the right ideas and you're just not going to benefit in the same way as the healing power of another human who understands me. I feel heard. I feel understood. I mean, that's just such a wonderful place to start. So glad you found that and you found it online. So you kind of went shopping for coaches and that's where you found it. So
I was desperate. I was in such pain and suffering where I can't even tell you, like I literally losing nights of sleep. I'm laying there and I sensed it, like the cortisol just in my stomach. I feel like my whole body I was like shaking and I couldn't, there's no way I could fall asleep in that state from nothing, from just sitting in my room. No threats, nothing happened that day. That was traumatic. I didn't see anyone get run over by a car, nothing. And I'm just sitting there shaking, 30 minutes of sleep. I wake up the next day, I'm exhausted. And it was like multiple times social gatherings. I mean, it was brutal. Losing my appetite. I can't, if I smell food, I would start gagging. It was very, very severe. And I was just scared. I was on it. That was the thing. I was just scared because I'm like, then it transitioned into health anxiety. I was worried that something was going to happen because I'm over stressing, eating less. People are, oh, you lost weight. I looked sucked up here. Jawline was like right super skinny. It just didn't, workouts, nothing was as effective. I wasn't living. I wasn't operating I was operating at a terrible level.
Well, there are a lot of base needs there you weren't getting met, right? So I've mentioned this on other podcasts, but we use HALT a lot: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? So if you have any of those states going on, you need to kind of be very careful about decision making and things like that. In addiction treatment, that's kind of a recipe for a relapse. If you're walking around hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you like need to halt, stop, find your sponsor, find a meeting, because you're not going to be working up to capacity. You're very vulnerable in that state. So you're carrying around this elevated level of anxiety, health anxiety with it. Oh, by the way, I'm not sleeping, so I'm not recharging my batteries. I'm not eating, so there's not proper nutrition, for my body to process these chemicals with. So you're running at multiple deficits at the same time. Not a comfortable.
No one knew about it too.
Yeah, because you were playing pretend all along, right? Because so tell me about, you dig into this work with this coach. Tell me how that starts, and tell me kind of how you guys approached it versus if you could talk a little bit about that, because you're kind of using coaching and therapy sort of interchangeably, but I can hear the difference between the two. You kind of conceptualize them differently. So tell me about the work that you did with this coach and kind of how it compares to like traditional therapeutic work, like why this might have worked a little better for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love this. This is the good stuff. Like this stuff, to the listeners, man, I can't even explain to you how many doors this has opened for me. Like, as shitty and as terrible an anxiety disorder, panic disorder is, it's literally transformed me. Like it really has. It's opened so many doors. But when we initially started, like you said, that it was just the first click of like, okay, this person understands me. And it's having a coach or a community or a safe person that you can reach out to talk to this about, that understands you. Like, because I thought there was something wrong with me. And if you're struggling with this, like, you think like, oh damn, like this is not normal. But when a guy or a girl says, dude, you're perfectly normal, everything is fine, and every time you hop on a call with them, they say the same thing. You message them, they say the same thing. Eventually, after 1, 2, 3 weeks, you're gonna be like, okay, like there's some sense to this. And then I started to notice, like, I would have anxiety, and then it would kind of go away, and I would feel good for hours and days. Like, okay. And I started to connect the dots. Like, okay, this is starting to make more sense. Like, I see what he's saying. Like, this isn't as bad as I thought. Like, maybe this is actually healable. Because at first I thought that it wasn't. Like, I was like, damn, this may be something I'm going to suffer with for my whole life. So it was the coaching. That was the biggest thing, is having someone that is there to support you, help walk you through it, and educate you. Because I didn't know what this was. Like, if someone tells you like, okay, what is anxiety? Like, cortisol is released in the blood, adrenaline is released, and your RAS narrows, reticular activation system, you start to search for danger. That's all that happens. That's it. Like, nothing changes around you. You're just searching for danger because you want to make sure that you and your body stay safe. And in a anxiety, if you have a panic attack, it's just amplified. It's just way more intense, and you're afraid of just living. You don't know what's happening. But yeah, so it started with the coaching. Then he educated me on this and told me what's happening is that, yeah, you have intrusive thoughts, but it's not the thoughts. The problem is that your nervous system is charged up. It's aroused like crazy. Like anything that happens is arousing the nervous system. It's triggering you, everything. So that's what a disorder is when it's a false alarm that's going off for no reason. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Because he goes, 10 years ago, you could have the same thought of, with the school shooting, like, could anyone be a school shooter? A thought like that would come up and you'd be like, nah, of course not. Like, there's no way. And then you just continue to live your life. But because I had so much energy that I guess like toxic energy in my body, I latched onto that thought and I thought to myself, like, damn, like this is a big deal. And I made a big deal out of it. So it was healing the nervous system. And I did that through meditation, specifically body scan meditation. You can look them up on YouTube, where you go through body part by body part. And that just really helped me. It put me in such a relaxed ease state. It was almost like I took a drug. Like every time I did the 30 to 45 minute meditation, it was like healing, like relax. It was amazing. So good. So good. And that is a commitment, 30 to 45
Sure.
minutes a day. But
You were spending that time in a panic anyway, right?
well, in at first, that's another thing. If you're the first 2 to 3 weeks, your body's not going to want to calm down. You're not gonna your mind isn't going to want to say. You don't even have to have a disorder. Like even if you just pick up meditation, you're like, I'll try it out 5 to 10 minutes here and there. You're not going to want to sit because you don't do it. We have the phones. We're on Instagram constantly. Like it's not going to. It's your mind's not going to want to do that. But after 2 3 weeks, eventually you'll adjust and be like, okay, like this is the time to relax. Your mind kind of flips the switch. And yeah, that helped me so much, man. That was like, because he was so right about that. Like you can have all these great, crazy, screwed up thoughts in the world, but if you're calm and your nervous system is healed, it's not going to matter. Like you're just going to keep living life.
So when you talk about that, my nervous system was primed, to respond to danger, primed. It's almost like I think about, again, with alcoholics or addicts, like I have a genetic component that makes it more likely for me to get addicted. What you're saying is either through natural physiology or how you'd been living your life since a young kid, getting these messages of like, you've got to watch everything because you have to be good enough. You got to do better. You had kind of overwired and overcharged your sensory system to be on the lookout, right? So if we go back to primitive man, the grass moves. Is it a threat or is it the wind? You only saw threats. Like every grass moving, I'm primed to see threat. So you see what you're looking for. We know that to be true over and over. If you set your mind to, I'm going to have a good day, and you truly believe that, you'll find all the things that prove you had a good day. If you're like, my life sucks and there's nothing I can do about it, and you truly believe that, the same day can happen and you'll pick out the things that prove you have a shitty day, and you'll assign importance to that. And that'll be how you describe your day. Even if you only had 5 crappy minutes, you'll go, oh, all day sucked, the whole day, and here's my evidence. You were just really good at picking out bad evidence, right? Like everything became evidence of danger. So it was almost like a predisposition to something like that. Gotcha.
100%. And that's why I think therapy made it worse, because we were trying to figure this out and we were thinking about it and we were analyzing it, but there really is no analyzing to be done. In this case, if you're having full blown panics, like you should think less, stop thinking, like calm the nervous system down. So I really found, like in the beginning, it even got to a point where my therapist, you don't have to live like this, man. Like send me a message. And this really hit me because I was, there's another thing we didn't talk about, the whole medical industry and what they think about this, or what they don't know about this stuff. This is crazy. But I was sitting in a Starbucks again, had therapy earlier that day, panic, sent him a message, and he said, man, you don't have to live like this. I know you're suffering. I know you're struggling. There's a bunch of, really great medication out there. I'm usually not a therapist that recommends it. There's great SSRI inhibitors, which I don't even know what that was.
Yeah. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? So
yeah,
the typical antidepressants that people think of. Yep.
Yeah. Now look it up. I see antidepressant. I just felt my heart drop to my stomach. I was like, I have not heard one successful case of someone going on this and then coming out good. Like none. Everyone that I talk to, like everyone's like, yeah, I mean, it helps here and there. And sometimes it doesn't even, it just makes you feel good. It just changes the dopamine in your brain. And then that's it. Like, so that really terrified me because I really felt helpless. Like, I'm like, if my therapist is recommending me this, like, I don't know what to do. Like this is bad. I really felt like I hit a rock bottom. I forget what was the question? What were we talking about?
I don't know, but no. I think what we're talking about is, for me, it feels like action orientation was really important for you. I think probably as a current and former athlete, I think that probably really spoke your language as well, right? Like, because you were mentioning that therapy almost made it worse because, which is funny, I was sitting there thinking like therapy as an irritant, right? Like when is therapy counter-indicated? And right now therapy is, and I've been a therapist for 20 years, like, so I'm a big believer in the benefits, but not all cases are successful, right? So when it doesn't work, what's going on? It's interesting to think about therapy being contraindicated for certain conditions, right? Because it's like a blanket right now. Well, it couldn't hurt and it might help. So try some therapy. But in your case, it was like, no, I needed action. I needed specific, detailed steps. I mean, it sounds like you liked the understanding piece in terms of the chemical cascade, and that's probably your exercise physiology background, like, right? Like you wanted the Krebs cycle for anxiety. Like this becomes this, becomes this, becomes this, right? And
I should create that.
you
Yeah,
should.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's not out there. You should. Yeah, you sell enough posters alone. But no, so. But for you, then it was like, okay, so what do I do? And that's how Freudian therapy fell apart, right? So Freudian therapy, people sat on the couch for 2 years. They realized at the end of 2 years, it was their mother's fault. And then they sat up and go, so what do I do about it? Right? You don't want to do the 2 years. You wanted to get to the like, what do I do about it? And this coach provided you some tools that seemed to be very helpful for you. So
Yeah, and the therapy I thought was really great, but when my therapist recommended me the medication, a week before that or 2 weeks before that, I went to having a full-blown panic attack. I was at home in the city, and my parents were like, "Yeah, let's just go to the doctor, see what he says." Went to the doctor and asked me 5 questions, literally 5 questions, and I wasn't honest because I knew if I was honest, he would prescribe me something hardcore. I was terrified. I wasn't like, how often do you feel, I forget what the questions were, but this tornado of thoughts or whatever. I was like, once in a while. In my mind, I'm like,
daily,
no, every day,
right
bro.
now. Yeah. Self-report for somebody suffering from anxiety disorder. That's a tough combination, man, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
And
how has it been? Not to derail too far, but how has it been? It sounds like you've got some pretty wonderfully supportive parents. What do you think the impact of this has been on them? I mean, have they been a source of support the whole time, or were they confused as well? Like, what's been their approach to supporting you during this?
yeah, both. It was initially it was a shock. It was fear. I remember talking to my mom about this. This was a few months ago where it ramped up. It kept coming up. Like this anxiety was really, really bad. And I remember telling them one night, calling them, and she started crying. And I was like, that's not what I wanted out of this, like that's the last thing that I want. I don't want to hurt other people. And I kind of pulled back. I was a few days, I'm like, I don't know if I should share this with other people because I don't want to hurt other, like my loved ones. Like that sucks. But they were they were supportive with everything because I was honest with them. I was like, I'm having these feelings, and they were just confused because they didn't know what this was, and understandably so. People don't really talk about this. A lot of people don't know what a panic disorder is, and they it was until I got in touch with Glenn. Shout out to Glenn Murphy, my coach, where he started helping me through this. It was like, that's when I learned about this, and then I can educate them on it. I'm like, guys, this is all that's happening is just it's just a buildup of energy, and is being channeled into fear and panic.
Threat detection. Yeah. So you had mentioned that's great, and I guess what I would add to that or suggest is the idea that they probably knew that you were struggling long before you called and said, "I'm struggling." Right? They know you. I know the facade and I know the mask, but a parent loves their child and they have a sense. They may not be able to put their finger right on it. And I know there was a lot of work done on the outward appearance of success in college and holding it together and, hold your breath during the social event and have the panic attack on the drive home. It sounds like there was probably a lot of that happening, right? And behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But when they get over the initial shock, parents are generally relieved because it's like, okay, now it's on the table and we can do something about it. We can work on this together, so.
Yes, 100. I definitely felt that where it's like, okay, like what can we, because they tell me all the time, whatever you like, we'll support you, anything you need, anything you want. And I think that that's super key, super crucial. But I feel like a lot of parents, all parents are going to help and support their children, but, and this may be a little bit harsh, but like where did this anxiety initially stem from? And sometimes it does, not sometimes, a lot of parts are from childhood. And, I think it's important for the parents and the person that's suffering to kind of take a closer look to see, like, okay, where did this come from? How can we, do this differently? How can we help you get this better? So I don't know. It's I don't have kids, so I don't really know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you look well rested, so I figured you didn't have kids. So so when you say scaling it back for you, is that kind of primarily your interactions with dad, you think? I mean, was that sort of the crux of it where that pressure started to build? And if so, have you guys had the conversations you need to have about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Many conversations. Um, they grew up in Czechoslovakia. It was under communist control, Soviet Union. So everything was like, boom, like, don't play games. Like, this is it. This is the situation. Don't talk back or we'll hit you with the ruler, like, and they immigrated, they came here, I don't know, what was it, 30 years ago or whatever it was. And they've adjusted, but that those roots, and whenever we go back, to Slovakia, I speak the language. I go there all the time. I have almost all my family's there, and I could see it. I could sense it. I'm like, okay, I kind of see where this mentality, this mindset is coming from. Do I think that's like this is the main reason for the disorder? No, but I feel like it is a part of it. I think it is a part of the story where it's just like an applied pressure. Like I can't explain. I just felt like a need to just always do something, and it was just unacceptable for me to just hang around and be quiet and just chill. It, as crazy as that sounds, I really thought like I always had to put a show on. I always had to be super nice to that person. If we had company over, I had to jump around him like a freaking monkey, make sure that he's okay. It's like, and people don't like that. And that's another thing I love to talk about, that me and my coach, Glenn, we definitely discussed that, this whole process, how it like, learning what has gotten me to here, and this whole nice guy syndrome. That's what Robert Glover calls it, and recovering from being a nice guy. And that has been a huge thing that's been the biggest thing that I've realized about myself through this journey. And I love to talk about that, man. That is like crazy stuff. Mm-hmm.
The nice guy, yeah, because the flip side of that is the Peterson stuff, right? Be a monster, but learn how to control it, right? And so it's sort of like acknowledging your true self and what's really possible. I've got these claws, but I choose not to use them. That's a much more noble experience than to not have claws to begin with and just be that middle of the road nice guy. Because a lot of times to be a nice guy, you have to subvert your own desires. You have to subvert what you really feel. And you have to kind of play pretend. So it's hard, right? Because a little bit of nice makes the world go round. If you're not nice at all, it's like you'll have no social relationships because everybody will reject you, because your truth will be very alarming to me and that will make me feel uncomfortable. And so now I'm not going to invite Richie to the party because I don't want to hear the truth today. I just want to have a nice time. You know what I mean? So it's like everything else in life. It's all about moderation and balance. You want to have the capacity, but to feel like you always have to be on is crushing.
Yes. It was just always like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And there's particular relationships that I had where, family friends, really good people, they would come over or we'd go over to their place and spend weekends together. And, and the parents were like, yeah, go talk to her, go talk to him, keep them company, all the time. And it's like, yeah, it's great, but sometimes people just want to hang out by themselves, or sometimes people don't get along, and that's totally okay. Like, that's natural. But then back to that, what you said about the moderation and being nice guy, 100%. What my coach told me, and I love this. He goes, don't be a nice guy, be a good guy. Be a good person. Just be a good person. Be good to people, do good for the world. Because, and I highly recommend anyone listening to this, look up Dr. Robert Glover. He wrote this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. I'm about halfway through it. Game changing. Like, so if you consider yourself like too nice, overly nice to people, I think everyone should read this book, but especially if you feel like you resonate with what I'm saying, read this book, because it's just what he talks about is so true. And like, if you feel like if you're a overly nice guy, you're afraid of disapproving other people. And if you're going to say no to someone, then they're going to think you're an asshole. And like certain things that he says, I'm like, damn, that it's so true. It's almost like he's in my mind. And as I'm talking to my coach about this, reading his book, I'm like, hold on. Could this be a big reason why I've developed this disorder where I'm constantly just on lookout and like feeling triggered all the time? And I was like, I think this is it. So I'm, recently in the last like month, 2 months, I've been kind of in this transformation where really leaning into that masculine energy and healing and like unraveling these certain habits and that I've put in place where I haven't put myself first. I'm always trying to please other people. Well, it's like, no, you got to meet your needs first so that you can serve other people at a high level. And it was that buildup of victimhood. That's what I was mentioning earlier, that feeling like a victim. Like, I was nice to this person. Oh, they're not nice to me. Oh, fuck them, And it was constant. It's like, no, like, first of all, they don't have to be nice to you. Like, who says, where does that say that he has to do that? And the second thing is you're just thinking about you. You're just trying to manipulate other people to like you so that you feel good. It's a manipulative tactic.
That's right. And a highway to resentment. Right, because you're making an unspoken deal. I was nice to you, so you're going to A, B, and C for me, but it's unspoken, so they don't know what your expectations are. They don't know what your hope is, right? And so they don't fulfill the contract. They aren't nice back, or they are worse, dismissive, and they ignore you, right? And you're like, well, hold on, like you just said, I did my part of the deal that nobody agreed to, and I didn't tell you about, but it's still a deal. I was nice. Right. So I got this coming. And when it doesn't come back, that is a highway to resentment, right? That is how you get lashing out, because after years of that, it's like, okay, no, that book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, that can go really, really bad, right? It's like, okay, I've had it. I've been nice to everybody for the last 20 years of my life. My boss just spit on me in front of everybody. All right. Now everybody's going to pay for what I've been putting up with for the last 20 years. And that's how you make the news.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
that's so true. No, it's victim purging. I think that's what Robert Glover calls it. This author, he's so good. He's such I love his stuff. Like any sort of content, YouTube, his books, just genius. So good. I resonate with it personally. I love it. And he talks about this stuff, and same thing with he got started in it because of his relationships and his marriages and how they were terrible. He said they failed. He was overly nice to them, and his wives didn't respect him. They were like, no, he's not sharing what he feels. He's just trying to be nice so that he can manipulate us so that we give him approval. And then randomly, like, you would have these like victim outbursts.
Sure. Yeah, you owe me. You owe me.
Yeah. And you're not a nice guy. Like, that's not nice. Yeah. That's not being nice. Yeah. You're being an asshole.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly not being authentic, right? You're not being your true self. And I like what you said earlier about, you can't help others unless you help yourself first. I really think as a society, we kind of need to redefine how we feel about that word selfish, right? Like, we think selfish is like one of the worst things you can be, but it's not. If you got to pay your bills first before you give to charity, or everybody ends up homeless, right? You give all your money away. That's nice. You're not selfish. Yeah, but you don't have a house now because you didn't pay your bills. Emotional currency is the same way. You have to pay your emotional bills first. And if you've got 5% left at the end of that, that's a real 5% you can give versus faking giving away 50% and your emotional needs aren't met. And so you've now built those resentments, you've now built those angers, and you become less happy in your own life, and therefore also less happy or less able to help others be happy and assist them on their journey as well. It's just not real. It's just not authentic, and it's certainly not sustainable. And it sounds like you lived through that a little bit. So.
Oh yeah, I felt it a few times. Yeah.
So getting back to, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like, just that was like the biggest thing working with this coach. The meditating, having support, and also another thing I didn't mention is clearing out the adrenaline by doing cardiovascular exercise. As a tennis coach, whenever I would be moving around, no panic attacks. Surprise, right? Crazy. So he's like, oh, you got to get running. He goes, you got to do longer distance runs, 3 mile, 5 mile. So that's another thing that I also incorporate to kind of cleanse the body out. And Joe Rogan talks about this all the time, how like you do a tough workout, the anxiety that you experience if you do it in the morning, the rest of the day is just like, it's just silence. Like everything else feels like nothing. So that was definitely a big thing. And then healing, and now like unraveling. And I was like, hold on, have I been a nice guy? I think I have this nice guy syndrome. So I'm kind of in I guess, a recovery of like coming out of this. And it's been unbelievable, man. It's been so cool.
Freeing. Have you started, you're talking about the Rogan stuff. Have you started plunging yet? You started your cold plunges?
I was like on it in the beginning when I was in online business. Yeah, 5 a.m. I was in like
cold
shower, shivering my balls off, did all of it, and I think
worst.
it's so good.
It's great, right? You know, 2x on the dopamine, 3x on the norepinephrine, right? You get 4 to 6 hours of like, okay. But it's the worst thing. It's just, I'd rather wake up and just be hit. You know what I mean? Just hit me one time than deal with that. So consistency is a problem there. So we're kind of pushing on time a little bit, man. I love so much of what you shared. I do have a couple more questions before we go. So one, is there any of this stuff that kind of has, influenced or affects your work now? Like, are you now working with people who are dealing with this as well? Or is this just, you're kind of like carrying the message for this other coach? I mean, has it changed how you approach your work and your focus as well?
Yeah, 100%. It's in the very beginning stages. I'm, healing, and I am helping people, but not actively. Like, I don't have an offer or coaching program around helping people with anxiety disorders and stuff. Just because I want to take this time for me. I haven't done that. I'm always trying to do stuff. It's like, help yourself. And I feel like all my whole life has always been trying to do something for others and look good. It's like, no, just take some time for you. And that's really what I've been locked in on. And yeah, carrying the message, telling people like, this is, if you're suffering with this is healable. Like, fam, like I struggle with this 4.5 years, and just from, well, not just from, it's a commitment, but running multiple days a week, meditating, receiving coaching, those 3 things within 3.5 to 4 weeks, I was almost healed. Crazy, like not having any panic, the nervous system low. I mean, I was like enjoying being by myself in my apartment. It was crazy. It went for the complete opposite, where I couldn't even watch Netflix because I would just sit here in a panic. And now it's like I feel calm and at peace. So
that's amazing. No, and I want to take this opportunity to we talk about taking the word selfish back. I mean, when you say, no, I'm going to focus on me for a while, it's like, well, there you go, being selfish. And then ... way to go. Like that's what we mean by being selfish. Like, I think that's an incredibly mature decision, and it's a selfish decision and a very positive use of the word selfish. You know what I mean? That's exactly what we mean by making that choice. My last question, you kind of tapped into it a little bit. So you said, you like the body scan meditation. As far as, we like to leave people with some to-dos and some suggestions, right? So this is kind of the data dump time. So if people are coming to you and they're saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, what would be some of the behavioral recommendations, and what would be some of the resources you would point them at that you would say like, hey, read this guy, do these things, it's going to make a difference, and then come back to me in a month and tell me how you're feeling. So where would you point people?
Yes. Oh, I love this. Okay. So I think it depends on what you're struggling with. Like, if you feel like this is a disorder, something that's influencing your life, like not just anxiety here and there, like it's chronic, then reach out to me, right? Richie Sec, Instagram, Glenn Murphy, my coach, reach out, get help, therapy, get help, like get someone involved in your life that is, and tell people about what you're struggling with, because when you start telling people, you get people on board and you create a fan base. That's how I viewed it. Like my parents are my fans. They're cheering me on. Everyone's cheering me on to help me get through this. The second thing is, identifying what you're struggling with, but whether it's chronic anxiety or mild anxiety, running or working out, lifting weights, running, and meditation. Those 2 things have been so game changing for me, because if I don't do anything that day, as long as I get those 2 things done, I'm happy, because that took me one step closer to healing. Like the snowball starts out small and then you just roll it in the snow and it keeps building and growing. Like that's that was my mindset going into this. And those two things really were just that was my foundation. And then, yeah, through the third thing would be through all therapy work, really going deeper, educating yourself on this stuff and learning more about you, because if you are suffering with chronic anxiety, there is a reason for it. There has to be. It didn't just come from nowhere. There's no chance. And when you look back at your history and how you've consistently felt over time, your habits, the lifestyle you live, who you attract, who you surround yourself with, what you do, plus you add all these things together, you get the result, and it starts to make sense. So viewing it there, and then creating a plan, like writing this out, taking time to be like, okay, well, if you're, for me, for example, like right now I'm locked in on overcoming this nice guy syndrome, reading the book, because it really hit me. It resonated. Like this was one of the things where I read, I'm like, dude, it's so uncomfortable to read it. And that's how I knew it hit me. I was like, damn, like this sucks, but I know this is what I'm struggling with. And I was just so locked in on on doing a few things. And I feel like everyone should do that. Just set a plan. You have your 2-3 things that you got to get done every day, and just smash it. Like that's it. You just smash through it, and set your goals 3 months, 6 months from now, and then see how you feel. And before you know it, within a few weeks, you're going to be feeling amazing. And I think that's a recipe for anything, but especially for this, because anxiety disorder, it's tough. You don't know what's happening and you feel stuck. But over time, if you take those little baby steps every day, you can heal through it. You can. I did it. So many people have done it.
Yeah, I think that's the key too, is understanding that it's not. You and I have this in common. We talked kind of pre-show about that moment where you feel like, man, if this is what I'm going to feel like forever, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? Not in any kind of dramatic way, but just in a sense of like how I'm living my life and that experience. But it's really not a forever thing. It evolves and it changes. Good and bad. I mean, you can have resurgences and you can have difficult times when you think you had it beat. You can also understand that even in your darkest moments, that's not your forever. Like it's going to evolve. It's going to change. So I like what you said about do this for a month, do it for 3 months, do it for 6 months, reevaluate, because you're certain to be in a different place, whether it's better or more difficult, it's going to be different. And you'll learn from what you just went through and make the necessary adjustments, and just keep growing. So, yeah, that's awesome, man. Real quick on the body scan stuff. Did you use like John Kabat-Zinn, or do you have any specific? Is that who you use? Yeah. Is it your guy? Okay.
That's what Glenn Murphy, my coach, he recommended me. He's like, John Kabat-Zinn, do this. He's the founder of mindfulness, putting into modern day medicine. Started researching him a little bit more, and it's great. I mean, any sort of body scan meditation, I think, is great. But also, I do recommend No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. That book everyone needs to read that book. That book is so good, man, so good. It really hit home. Like, if there's one read that I would say, it's that. Like, for anybody, if you're struggling with anxiety or not, well, mostly for anxiety struggles, this is so good.
Yeah, it's such a magical thing when you find the right resource. You know what I mean? You can search and search and search through like false starts and things that didn't work. When you find that thing that clicks for you, it's just like the world opens up, So that's awesome. This is definitely going to be a show where we have to put a lot of show notes in, man, because we're going to get all those resources into the notes. We'll put as many links in there as we can. We'll put your social and then your coach Glenn Murphy, you said, as well. And we'll get that. We'll put those in there as well.
Yeah, his Instagram, Panic to Paris, from Panic to Paris, something like that. Because he lives in Paris now, but he's from Ireland. So he moved after he recovered from agoraphobia. I think he struggled for 10 years. Moved to Paris, living there with his girlfriend. Amazing guy. I mean, like, amazing. So transformational.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm going to wrap this now. Like I said, we're short on time, but Richie Sec, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being real with us and being honest. I mean, we have a lot of episodes where we've got folks kind of sharing theory and therapy and kind of approaches, but having that real life experience of like, man, this is what I've dealt with and this is what life looks like today. You know how it works online. You may never hear from the person who it affects, but it's going to change some lives for people to hear that. And I appreciate you sharing that 100%. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
Yeah,
I can't wait to do it again.
We will. I was gonna say, let's give it 6 months when you get through with I have a suspicion that someday Richie's going to be in the space offering coaching or something.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
When you're done being
nice
selfish,
guy coaching.
Yeah, when you're done being selfish, you'll have like a nice guy support group or something like that. And you have to come back on, man. We'll be glad to post that and let everybody know. So. That's awesome, man. All right, dude. Well, thanks so much, Richie. Take care. And let me wrap up real quick. So, like I said, we always do this at this time. So, as everybody knows, Through Helping Back is fully sponsored by New Behavioral Health. So, if you're struck by Richie's story, if you're feeling like too much of a nice guy, if you're having those moments in the sushi restaurant on the side of the highway or whatever it is, man, and you're just feeling like life could be a little bit better, in Ohio and New Hampshire, New Behavioral Health could be the answer that you're looking for. ANEWBH.com, or you can always email helpnow@anewbh.com. We're talking psychiatrists, we're talking therapists, we're talking nurses, we're talking case managers. And the best thing about Anew, the thing that I'm most proud of with Anew, is it is 100% individualized care. You're not going to get a prepackaged solution. You're not going to get a, here's our program. I'm not indicting any program, but I am highly suspicious of any program where you walk in and they've never met you and they go, we know this is what's going to work for you before we've even talked to you. You want individualized care. Integrated options are awesome, but if it's not individualized to your particular situation and your needs, it's just less likely to work. So we want to give a plug to Anew. And again, we want to thank producer Ian. He's been here. He's been soaking this up. Ian, thank you so much for making us look
legend.
good.
The
right.
legend. Where's he at? Ian Masood, man. Come on, show yourself, bro.
You didn't do a camera today.
Camera. Yeah, I got a camera. What's up, guys?
Oh, you have a camera? There he is.
I do.
There he is. There's the great
see a
Ian.
beautiful
I've been
face.
waiting for this moment my entire life.
To be on camera. And now the moment's here. And now it's here. Right. Yeah. So that's awesome. And again, thank you so much, Richie, for being here, man. I really enjoyed the time, and we'll talk soon. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thanks so much.